workshop is developing leadership skills for neighborhood council members. I wanted to ask first, how many of you are presidents of neighborhood council? Okay, and how many of you are an officer of some kind or a chair of something? Oh, a lot.
And how many are brand new board members?
That's the next question.
Great.
Okay, very good. I'm Joe Banks Barad, and I'm going to be the presenter today, and with me is Judith Daniels. I'm president at Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then Judy's going to talk about herself and what our backgrounds are, and then we're going to delve right into this. We're going to make a short presentation, and then want to turn it over to you and see what your questions and your concerns are. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Temple University. I was a theater major, may not be able to tell. Anyway, you know, theater is politics and politics is theater. And so for the past 30 years, I've been a political consultant, PR, fundraiser, event planner, and I run political campaigns for a living. I want to talk to you about leadership and what are the traits that are necessary to be a leader. And I'm going to really not talk about too much on a corporate level because we're talking to neighborhood councils. So, number one, you have to be a good administrator. Because you're not just conducting a monthly meeting. Some people want to be the president because they like being able to say, well, the meeting comes to order and be kind of, you know, lead the meeting. That's just one part of it. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of behind the scenes going on. You have to know what your committees are doing. You have to juggle a lot of balls in the air at one time. And then you have to hopefully not, you know, make too many people unhappy. Also, you need to be thick-skinned. And I think I learned that working with my candidates as a political consultant, and that's what I always tell them. You have to be thick-skinned because if, as president or as a leader, everyone loves you and you're just terrific, you probably have not been doing your job. Because somebody is bound not to agree with you on a particular issue or not like the way you handled something. And even the best councils, there's always something that happens and you just have to say, okay, I'll deal with this. And you have to be thick-skinned. The other thing, same thing with politics, you have to have a sense of humor. Because that has gotten me through many an issue and a controversy and dealing with people. You can't take yourself too seriously. And if you have a sense of humor, you are more likely to see things in perspective. Not everything is a hill to die on, folks. You know, spending $500 to rent a porta potty is not the most important thing that we discuss at a neighborhood council. So you really have to put things in perspective. And a lot of it is just common sense. Some issues in your community are really important, and some are just not so important. We created this pothole lottery, and what we did is we asked our constituency, Sherman Oaks, we have somewhere around 65,000 people, what were the worst potholes? And we got this list. And it was amazing, you know, up in the hills, and it was very dangerous. There were holes and people were swerving to avoid these potholes. The businesses had, the alleyways were all gutted out and looked awful. So what we did is we partnered with the Department of Street Services. And if any of you know Nazario Sesteta, he's wonderful. And we said, what can we do? We can't wait another 30 years. we have to take care of this now. And what he suggested is that we rent the trucks. And so what they did was we took some of our funding, actually we did $12,000, and we partnered with the Bureau of Street Services. And they came out, we gave them, the first they looked at our list, and then they said, yeah, we can fix all of this. And they came out, and there they were, in the first one I helped, very good. And you know, people came out of their houses and said, what are you doing? And we said, we're fixing the pothole, in your street. They were amazed. And they said, we never thought that this would be done, ever. We've been waiting so long. So it was a great way for the community to know what the neighborhood council was about. And when we went behind the businesses, we introduced ourselves to the businesses and said, how would you like to have the alleyway paved? Great. So then the businesses got to know who we are. But I think it's thinking outside the box. Oh, by the way, we got this award today. Yeah, there was no time for her to say, what we did, so that kind of sucked, but that's what we did. And I think what we did, and what a lot of councils are doing, is they're really bringing government closer to the people, really looking at what are your needs. And I think that's what you have to have a vision. And the best leaders have a vision. Committee chairs. A committee chair should have a vision. What do you want to do with this committee? What do you want it to be? What do you want it to accomplish? What do you want to accomplish with this committee? Just to have a committee and meet and talk about nothing is not really, it's not productive. So you want to have some kind of an idea of what you want to do, what's needed in your community. There are different styles, as you know, of leaders. There's kind of the dictator, you do it my way or else. I was once in an organization, I've been on a lot of boards, and one time I was in an organization and the president said, well, if you don't do it my way, I quit. And I was ready to say bye-bye, Bob. But you know what happens, people, people say, oh, well, I don't have your feelings and all that. But you can't be a dictator. And the other extreme are the people that don't do anything. They just assume the title and then let everything kind of happen. And you'll see in any organization, that's an organization that will just kind of fall apart. Then there's a person who is a leader by consensus, that everybody has to like it and everybody has to agree. Let me tell you about consensus. It's highly overrated. Because if you try to make everybody happy, you probably are not going to accomplish anything. And many times people will give in to a minority who just screams the loudest or the loudmouth in the group because they want consensus, they want everybody to be happy. So beware of that. Now, as far as your meetings, I think that the main thing with neighborhood councils is that when you are giving a report or you're the president, when you first say the meeting will come to order, you need to look friendly and you need to be friendly. Because I've been to a lot of neighborhood councils that they are dead and dull and they're not friendly. It just looks like people sitting up front and they don't project this feeling that you're all part of the community. So, I mean, this is the basic thing, but it's welcome. Welcome to the neighborhood council. So glad to see everybody here tonight. And then what we do, we start off with the flag salute, and then we call the roll. And I explain to people about speaker cards. And I said, we want to hear from you. If you have an item that you want to speak about that's not on the agenda, And you, by the way, make sure everybody has a copy, not just the board, but the public has an agenda. And if you want to speak about an item that's not on the agenda, get a speaker card and write the number that's on here that's listed as public comment. But if you want to speak on an agenda item, put that in. Now, something about speaker cards, you do not, the people who fill out speaker cards do not have to put in any personal information, even though this might say that on the speaker card. You do not have to have your address, you don't have to have an email, a phone number. And the way I know that is because we had a very controversial land use project in Sherman Oaks, and the developer wanted all our speaker cards. And I refused to give it to him, and he says, well, it's public information, you have to give it to me, it's public records. And I'll go to the city attorney and I'll demand it. And I went to the city attorney and I said, you know, that's not fair that people come to our meetings and testify, in this case against a project or for a project, and then they're going to be hassled or they're going to be whatever by a developer. And I don't think it's right. People are not going to feel, safe. And they said, no, they're not required to give any information, just the name and what they want to speak about. So I think they're going to pass that on to you. Yeah.
Do they have to, does the president have to, or are they supposed to let people know? They don't
That's what I do. Now that I know that,
actually tell
now I say to everybody, all we need is your name and what item you want to speak about. You're not required to fill out anything else.
But first and last or?
Yeah, so that the reason you need the name is so you can call on them, otherwise you would.
Also, you may want to have their name for the minutes, so that you know who somebody was.
Okay, I'm going to now turn this over to Judy, and she's going to give a presentation, and then we'll talk about one thing. Yeah.
Can I ask just a follow-up question before that?
Yeah.
Jill, so did the city attorney tell you you had to turn over these speaker cards that you had?
Well, you really need to put in your bylaws how you handle those kinds of requests and what your policy is. In fact, we're about to amend our bylaws to put that in. Our policy is that I give the speaker cards, and at the end of the meeting, I give them to the secretary, and at the end of the meeting, they're destroyed. I don't hold on to them. So if that's our policy, that's the policy that has to be in our bylaws. Now, if some people hold on to them, that's something different, and they can ask for those. Okay, let's take the questions. Okay.
Just one last question. What about I know a lot of neighborhood councils have people sign in.
That's fine, yeah, and they don't have to sign it.
I know, I understand that, but those sheets are then can be asked for by somebody who, in that same manner, asked for the sheets of all the people that attended, and they're on a list someplace else that we don't.
That's true, although I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think that if you're asking people to sign in so that you're able to add them to a mailing list or contact them, I think that if you add them to a list and then destroy your sign-in sheets, I think that that's okay, although somebody can come back and say, I want your mailing list, I want your telephone list, or whatever. Basically, every meeting neighborhood council holds is an open meeting, and so everything that happens at an open meeting is public information. It can be a problem. Hi, my name is Jude Daniels. I'm currently the Vice President of Chatsworth Neighborhood Council. So why are we on neighborhood councils? Well, I'm sure that there are people who are out there for neighborhood councils for really personal reasons that benefit themselves. I think that we're supposed to be out here I think that we are supposed to be on neighborhood councils to be representing the stakeholders and to be helping our communities. So if you have other reasons to be on neighborhood councils that are just for your own enjoyment or your own power trip or something, maybe some of the things I'm going to say don't apply to you. But we're there for the stakeholder. you might want to reevaluate, and you might want to stop and think, what can I do to help the stakeholder and to make the stakeholder understand they are important? So, again, I'm going to tell you some things that I think are practical that are all part of being a good leader and showing leadership. You want to be prepared. You want to be on time. If you think there's any possibility that while you're running a meeting, you're going to possibly need to write something down, even if it's one word, have a piece of paper and pen or pencil. You know, don't find that you're starting a meeting and then you need to take some notes and you're suddenly turning around to somebody else to say, I need a piece of paper. Oh, can I borrow your pen? If you need any other supplies, have them. If you have a council that keeps really close time on how long somebody is allowed to speak, you need to have some kind of a timepiece, a timer or a clock or something. Make sure that exists. If you are the president or you're otherwise running the meeting, you want to cover all bases. When my kids were little, I used to have a saying with them that just in case. And my kids started to be a big joke that Mommy says just in case. Well, I think that's the same thing at a meeting. If you think you might possibly need it, have it there. My neighborhood council, I made up my own agendas. Some councils do that, other councils have an executive committee that makes up the agenda, or maybe the secretary does it. If you are leading the meeting, know what is on your agenda. Don't walk into the meeting and pick up the agenda and say, oh gosh, I wonder what that's about. If you have committee, and I've been meetings where that's happened. If you have committees and items come through committees, the committee studies something and then makes a recommendation to the board, has motions that they present to the board. If there is something that has gone through a committee and you don't know what that is, if you're going to run a decent meeting, you should know what is it that people are asking for money or support for, what the issues are, and even if you do not have 100% knowledge, you should know at least the basics of what it is. You don't want to be sitting in a meeting and for the first time you're hearing about something that is not going to give the audience, either your board and or your stakeholders, a lot of confidence in you. So I'm going to tell you that one of the things I think makes a really good leader is you shouldn't be afraid to ask for help. And I'm not a power control person, and I learned long ago that it's a whole lot easier if you ask for help and if you try to figure out. For instance, when I was president, I discovered my council meets in a middle school library. It's a pretty big room, and I realized that I couldn't always see the entire room to know who was holding their hand up, who wanted to make a comment. So I asked the vice president to help me to be looking around the room to let me know if somebody wanted to make some comments. That's something little, but it really helps your meeting to run better. You might want to have somebody who's helping you keep time, or somebody who's making sure that you know that you've spent an awful long time on a particular topic, and somebody who's out there in the audience who's giving you the cut or the rap symbol. I recommend, especially if you are a new leader or a potential leader, you're not a leader yet, but you're thinking about it, I recommend that you try to find yourself a mentor. And I will tell you that even after I had been president for 5 years, there were things I learned. Frankly, Jill has been a big mentor to me for a long time. Because I respect her and I know what to expect from her. She makes suggestions about things that sometimes I agree with her and sometimes I think that's not going to work for me. That's another really important thing to remember is find yourself a mentor, but know your own audience, because the things that work for me may not work for you. So, it depends on how your meeting runs, it depends on the personalities on your board, it depends on the structure. One of the things, there's somebody sitting in the front row here that is the president of a fairly new neighborhood council. And even before the first election, he had come to me and had asked for some advice. I helped with their first election. It's North Hollywood Northeast. And, no, I'm sorry, Northwest. North Hollywood Northwest. And one of the things that I told Jim was, go to a neighborhood council meeting and just see how their meetings run. Just get an idea about how other people run meetings. And said, you may go to another meeting and you may find that you think it's an awful meeting. You say, my God, I would never run a meeting like that. And that is a much more important thing to learn than going to a meeting and saying, wow, that was pretty well run, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So having a mentor does not mean that you have to do everything exactly the way your mentor suggests. Having a mentor is just a way of bouncing ideas, getting some ideas, and having somebody to talk to. It helps you gain confidence, and confidence is one of the things that's really important. That if you have confidence in yourself and you have confidence in the way that you run a meeting, your meeting is going to be run a whole lot better. People are going to be more comfortable in your meetings. One of the things that about keeping a meeting running, I feel very strongly that when people have something to say, you want to acknowledge them. So there are always, I think every neighborhood council has some people that are that always want to say something. They may not add to the conversation, but they're always sitting there. They're sitting there. They're going like this, and I, let them know. I see that you're going, and they keep going like this, and I'll get to you. And they keep. Well, when we finally get around to okay, it's your turn to speak, and they start talking, and it turns out that basically what they want to say is, well, I agree with Jim and Grace and Jill and one of the things that I think shows good leadership skills and is important is if somebody wants to speak, board member or stakeholder, you want to acknowledge them and you want to let them know, yeah, I think you're important. But you need to figure out how to limit what they're saying. You don't want to waste time in your meetings. Now, there are always going to be some times when somebody starts talking and you just can't get them to stop. You can't cut them off for some reason. One of the things that I found was pretty effective, I think was pretty effective, is that somebody would start talking and they would be droning on, and I would let them make a point, and then I would say, we've got your point, thank you very much, next. We got to move quickly. And from my perspective, that was pointing that person to saying, yes, you have something to say, yes, you are important enough to say to public, you've made your point, okay, it's time to go on to the next person or the next subject. So you need to find your own style, because those particular words or that idea may not work exactly for you. But think about how you can keep a meeting moving. Because I think all of us have been to some meetings where somebody goes on and on and on. One other thing that I want to say is when I said be prepared and have supplies and things like that, one of the other things I think is really important is, especially if you're the president or any officer, you need to know your bylaws. You need to know them, and if you read them once a week, you read them once a month, you read them on a regular basis, you need to know your bylaws, because if you have not already discovered this, I'm here to tell you that if you don't know your bylaws, somebody else is going to come up and they're going to throw them in your face. They're going to ask you a question, and you're going to say, I don't know, I have to check on that. And they're going to throw the bylaws in your face. They're going to say, it says right here in section 3, number A27, blah, 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 blah. Somebody's going to have their smartphone, and they're going to click, 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 and they're going to put their smartphone in front of your nose and say, it's right here. You need to know your bylaws to run a proper meeting, to make the proper.
The board members, calling on them, and people, there's always somebody who has to comment on everything. And people who talk, again and again. What I do is I go around once, and sometimes I have to say, well, you've already spoken. Let's hear from somebody who has not already spoken. And then we go around. And there are times when I have said, is this on point? Because there's always somebody, you're talking about Philadelphia, they're talking about San Juan, Puerto Rico, and you think, did I doze off? What did I miss? That there's somewhere like really, and you don't want to say, what are you talking about? So I said, it was on point, and with this. You don't be afraid to do that, yeah.
I've experienced that. I've also experienced that some people, leaders, they go along with it. And I don't think so. How do we stop that from it?
Yeah.
Not in my committee, though, not in our.
Yeah, you don't have to.
The others.
You don't have to go along with that.
But I mean, they're
Yeah.
the ones that have to put their foot down.
Yes.
And just say, you know what?
It's very difficult if you have a president who is not doing his or her job of running the meeting appropriately. The one thing that I suggest is that if you are, whether you're another officer or whether you're a board member, even if you're a stakeholder, that it's a good idea to point out to the president, you let this person go on about something that was totally off point. However, I think that discussion needs to be done privately. You really don't, in the middle of the meeting, want to suddenly say, you're not doing a good job of leading this discussion because you let these people talk about things. But it's a real fine line of trying to get somebody's attention to point out that we need to move toward the discussion of what we're here to discuss, especially if you have a motion on an agenda that needs to be discussed. But I highly recommend that people think about what should be said in public as opposed to what should be said in private. And it's more if you have a person the president who consistently allows people to be off topic, that's something that is probably going to be handled better in private.
And I was thinking maybe more about our president actually. I've seen the same thing in committees and then the chair, just they go off on a tangent in the midst of
Yeah.
say something and the whole thing just
Yes.
different.
The best committees function when they know what their goal is and what their vision is and their purpose. And each of your committees should be charged with a mission, which is like a one sentence. What is their mission? What are they supposed to be doing? And then that's what they should follow, and that's what the meeting should accomplish. And if they just meet and it's very loosey-goosey and they don't come up with anything, and we've got a few of those, then it's really not a functioning committee. It's like three people sitting around talking. So I wanted to also mention about the public comment, and Judy and I do this differently. We do not allow any cross-talking with public and board. If you have a public comment, whether on the agenda or not on the agenda, that's how you do it. The only time we ever speak to someone who's making a public comment is for clarification or we have to defend ourselves, I've done that once. But otherwise, we don't allow back and forth. Now, I think that you lose control if you do that. And, I know one time somebody on my board started talking to somebody in the audience, and it went, back and forth, and I thought, you can't do this. You really do lose control. And I went to another neighborhood council about a month ago, and there was a man sitting in the front row, and he wouldn't stop, and the president and the board, they had this big dialogue, and it went on for like, a long time, and I'm thinking, why would anybody come back to this meeting and have witnessed this kind of thing? He completely lost control of the meeting, and I think I would recommend that public comment is, according to the Brown Act, you cannot have cross conversation. So that you do it that way so that you maintain control. Yes?
Yeah, question. When you have public comment before presentations, you allow the people that make public comment first come back with, after the presentations are made, and make additional
No.
comments?
No.
My council handles that stuff, put it differently.
Yeah, if it's an agenda item, let's say it's a development, then I call on people. And this is the other thing, normally they get 2 minutes. But our last big issue, we had 61 people who signed up to speak. Well, 2 minutes apiece, that's a lot. So I said, and this is the chair's prerogative, the president's prerogative, and I said, okay, you'll have a minute. Because I counted how many were there. And I thought, is it about to happen? And then I also said that we would appreciate it if you agree with something that somebody had said prior. If you would just say, I agree, and then, let's move on. And some people actually did that. They didn't speak. They just, I agree with the last speaker, I agree with so-and-so. But then they do not come back again after the public comment. I say, okay, public comment is closed. Then it goes to the board for discussion and perhaps a vote. That's it.
Exactly, since I get this, when I try to use, I put down all the information that I'm going to ZA in the agenda, so that people have an idea of what's going on and what they're going to be discussing. But unfortunately, sometimes the developers don't tell you everything they want to do, and you're
Who doesn't tell you that?
the developers,
The developers.
or the bar, or the restaurant bar, or don't tell you everything up front.
Do you have a land use committee?
We just started bumping, we just came to me.
Yeah, because all that should come through a land use committee. Yeah, and and that's where they need to give all those details through the land use committee. In other words, you shouldn't be kind of hearing about all this for the first
So you
time.
think I should have it vetted through the land use committee before it comes to my area?
Well, everything should be vetted through a land use committee before it ever goes to the
Where
board.
it never happened before.
Oh, you're in a whole new
Your
area.
committee, if you have committees, your committees are the place where you want to tear things apart
Yeah.
and discuss
Yeah,
as much as possible.
okay. Lisa?
Your language committee doesn't work because you're the board.
Excuse me, Lisa, wait a second.
I cannot hear the comments, is there a possibility?
We're trying, we have a translator here, and we need to try to speak louder so that she can
Can you
hear.
please speak louder or stand up, because I cannot hear, and then I cannot move too much because I have too much static on the equipment, so I have to just keep one position without moving.
Okay, I'll start.
Okay, Lisa.
I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee for Studio City. You should be receiving all the documents from the planning department, all the information. And our best practices is that we don't put anything on our agenda until we get the master land use application, which gives you a person's name to contact, and they better tell you everything that you're supposed to
They
know.
don't.
Pardon me?
They don't.
Well, then you need to go, I don't know which
I
planning department you are.
I've been helping deals with.
Okay, so you need to introduce yourself to the people in your government and get to know whoever it is that you're, is it Renee still?
We're ready for that.
Okay, whoever's taking her place, they will help you. You have to get those land use applications.
You need to set up a committee and have specific rules that you must present, you must have copies of whatever documents, and that land use especially needs to have really strict rules.
And then also, your land use committee would take a position, and that position goes to the board. And that, so it'd be In other words, a motion could be from the land use committee, is relevant to one of our committees, then, like say public safety, then we'll say, okay, we're going to refer this, and I turn to the public safety chair, and I said, would you get together with them and refer it to your committee? Right there, right as soon as the person is finished speaking, we refer it to a committee. But you really aren't supposed to have a dialogue with them.
What we do is we have people who will come in and tell us about a situation, a problem, and we will discuss with that. We will ask that person for more information about what it is that they're commenting on, and refer them to whichever one. We have 6 committees, so we refer them to one of our committees for further action or for further study. We do talk to people who are at our meetings for public comment quite a bit, but it's primarily to get enough information to figure out, is it something that needs to go on our agenda for the next month, or is it something that needs to go to a committee, which is usually the case. But you do need to be careful about what you say, what you allow people to say to public comment.
Yeah, the other thing about public comment, and I know there's some of us who are down here a lot testifying at city council or in committees. I'm going to call you just one second. That when we have a timekeeper, when the time rings at 2 minutes or 1 minute, and they're still going on, I know that sometimes in some places, in fact now at city council, they cut you off. That's it. In fact, at city council now, they turn the lights off, which to me is rude. But what I do is when they're finished, when the time is finished, I say, oh, finish your thought, or finish that sentence, and then that's it. But I think it's nicer, more courteous to say, well, finish your thought, rather than, that's it. Okay, the lady back here, and then Jen.
I had a question. At our last meeting, there was a young lady there was between the members there was some controversy, discussion. One of the members was not so friendly. You could feel the friction. One person against the whole board. So somebody in the public made a comment. I see that your board has problems. I see that you cannot get along. So in that case, what can the president say? Which committee can he refer to that person? Because lately, the public has been noticing it a lot. And you know what I mean? So what committee can...
Your president might want to speak privately with people who are involved and let the board members know, I'm hearing from the public
Yes.
that there's a perception of problems, and I hope that you will be more careful in meetings about what you're saying and how you're saying it.
And this is also a place where you might refer this to have a discussion, a camera discussion at the executive committee if you think it needs to go there. All right,
Thank
you. You're welcome, James.
Jill, just for clarity, because I think that for the way you run our meetings, in terms of public comment on agenda items, sometimes there is a presentation first of whoever's there to present something, then you give the public a chance to comment, and then the board discusses. And I don't know, it may have sounded a little bit like the public comments before anything else is said about the agenda item before it comes up, and I just want to make sure.
Well, yeah, usually the public comment is first. Yeah.
But like with the last thing that happened with the sidewalks, we gave a presentation,
Right.
and then the public
Right.
gave their comments.
The public comment is before the board, so that the board can hear what the public has to say. Diane, did you have a...
Yeah, just probably in response to what she said,
Can you stand up, because I cannot hear you. Thank you.
when our board first formed many years ago, we had some personality conflicts. And one of the things we did was we instituted 2 things every year, one of which is a board board retreat with a facilitator. And the first couple of years, we spent about half of that time doing team building, and the other half setting priorities. Now we just spend it setting priorities. The other thing that we did, we have a board dinner every year that is simply a social function. Cannot discuss business, therefore it's not Brown Act. And we bring spouses, so it becomes, again, another team building kind of thing to try to deal with and prevent some of the friction.
Yeah, I think that one of the best things you can do is to have a retreat. And when we do a retreat, first thing that I do is we go around the table and I ask people, introduce themselves, tell a little bit about yourself, and then tell us something that maybe we wouldn't know about you. And out of that, people get to know each other because, our boards, everybody's sitting, 18, 20 people. Sometimes you never get to know who's sitting down there, or who's over here, or you don't know them as people. And I think when you have this collegial atmosphere and feeling, it functions much better. I mean, that's what they're saying now in Sacramento, that this is the problem with term limits, that people are in and then they're out. And when they were there for longer, people built relationships. They went out for drinks, they went out for dinner on both sides of the aisle. Now they don't have time to do that. So get your board together, and I would recommend, as soon as you have elections, you have your new people coming on, plan a retreat. We have one where we start at 8:30 for breakfast, and you gotta feed the people, feed the board. We feed our treasurer, he doesn't like that, he's over there. This is for you, Howard, you gotta feed those people. I mean, some of them come in rare slumpings, and then after you kind of break some of those barriers, and then you say, what is it? What ability or special talent or interest do you bring to the board? And a good leader really listens to this. This is how you pick your committees and your committee chairs. When you hear what someone is interested in, what they do, what they like, this is how you pick a committee chair. And committees that are really good are when the chair is really passionate about that issue. Whether it's government affairs or public safety, whatever. That you want people that really care about it and have an idea what they're going to do about it. And the retreat is very important, and I would have it once a year. The other thing that gives you an opportunity to do a real quick review of ethics, about what it means, conflict of interest. People still don't understand what conflict of interest is. That it means that you have a financial or personal interest in that particular thing. So that's what you need to stress. And then very briefly go over the Brown Act, how you cannot communicate by email, what a serial email is. Go over the basics of the Brown Act and conflict of interest and financial disclosure. Do that, get to know each other, and you really you'll be a step ahead because people will get to know each other. Okay, yeah, I think there was a woman who wanted.
And then we have,
Man in the blue shirt.
No.
The one in the blue shirt.
We have to stand there.
Oh, is he before?
Yeah, and then,
All right, then you and then.
go ahead.
Yes.
Aproximadamente unos meses hubo un problema muy desagradable en nuestro consejo vecinal.
Yeah, a few months ago, we had a problem at our neighborhood house. It was unpleasant.
Fue una persona, bueno, pues no es ni de la comunidad, pero fue a poner de mala mi persona en nuestro consejo vecinal.
Somebody that is not from the community, they came to talk something bad about me at my neighborhood council.
La presidenta tomó su palabra de ella, ya después de comentarios públicos.
The president heard this person after public comments.
Y le dio aproximadamente 5 minutos para desprestigiar a mi persona, tanto la presidenta como la persona.
And gave this person 5 minutes to speak bad about me.
Y y esto lo llevó a una discusión muy fuerte en nuestro consejo vecinal. Así que
This caused a lot of dysfunction to our neighborhood. What can we do to deal with these problems?
Well, first of all, they shouldn't get 5 minutes, they shouldn't get any minutes, but I think that one of the things that the president should say, and certainly if it's a controversial issue or something like this, you say, look, we're going to conduct this meeting with civility and we're going to respect one another. And we will not have anyone go after anyone's character. And I think at that point, get the name of I would say got the name of the person, meet with them privately, but certainly not do it in a public meeting. I think that's poor form.
And I think the president was wrong to allow something like that.
I wouldn't allow that.
Especially for.
Yeah, and I would just, cut it off. Just say, no, we're just not going to do it, period. And presidents, I hope you all have a gavel. That's what you need a gavel for. We're not going to discuss that next and just move on.
What's your interpretation of the Brown Act at this point as far as the state attorney general and the city attorney has ruled that there are certain parts of the Brown Act that have been negated? I just don't know where we stand on this.
I don't know. The main thing is that you want to be transparent, that all votes can't have a secret ballot on anything, that all discussion must be in public, and that goes for land use committees, if there are any committees that attend your main meeting. And on the agenda, when you have a motion, you can't vote on anything unless it's on the agenda. And the motion there, was one of the city attorneys told me once, shouldn't be more than 18 words. In other words, you don't have to give page after page after page of background material and rationale. This is the motion. You can always attach background information. But it should say enough so that if anybody wanted to come and speak for or against it, knows enough to be there. So you have to give them enough. The main thing is, and we have this problem a lot, people emailing back and forth. And you can't do that. You have to, your discussion must be in public.
And you should remind board members on a regular basis, probably at every meeting, everything must be done in public. You can send informational emails around, but you should remind the board members that they may not discuss issues by email or by telephone or other means, that this is for your information, but it's not for discussion. I want to say, I didn't call on you, but I just want to say one really quick thing about committees, about leadership. If you have somebody new on your board, or if you are new on the board, and you think you might want to be a leader, one of the places that I think is really great for developing leadership skills is through the committees. That if you join a committee and you want to try to test, are you potentially a good leader? If you join a committee and then become a committee chair, depending on what your system is for chairs, in my council, the committees pick their own chair. And that's a good place where you can learn to run a smaller meeting, something that you could just learn and test your skills. So, go ahead.
My question was, do you use Robert's rules of order or parliamentarian to keep order from people speaking out of turn without getting your attention? Sometimes people have a tendency to start making comments, whether it's from someone from the stakeholders or a board member, that to speak out. So it's like, do you need a parliamentarian?
It really depends. I think presidents should acquaint themselves with Robert's Rules of Order. I have the book with me at all times at the meetings. If I have to bring it out, I will. But you really should know the basics of Roberts. And I just don't think you ought to allow people to shout out from the audience, and the president should say that. If you wish to speak, fill out.
And one at a time. And it is up to the president, the person who's running the meeting, to keep order and to remind people one at a time, only when you're called on. I personally think that the president absolutely needs to know Robert's rules, but I think that if we're going to have a parliamentarian, that there should be somebody other than the president, so that if the president, even if the president really knows Robert's rules, that there's somebody else that you can turn to just to make sure that, well, you know, my interpretation of Robert's rules is whatever, but you have somebody else that you can turn to and say, you know, would you concur with that?
The main thing about Robert's rule is it helps you maintain control of your meeting.
Absolutely.
And the two things as a president that you need to see. You need to have confidence and you have to have control. And you get confidence by knowing your stuff. You're familiar with Roberts, you're familiar with your bylaws, you know what's on the agenda, you understand how it's going to work. That gives you confidence. And then you must maintain control. Don't allow people to shout out. Let your board know that you will call on people. They're not to shout out, that they have to be recognized before they can speak. And when you have exercised that control, the meeting will go much, much better. Now, you know, you can have control, but you want to be fair. And that's the thing. You want people to know that you're fair. Eric.
Two parts. One, if someone wants to speak on multiple issues, say they will have a public comment on an agenda and they want to be on agenda item 8. You know,
Well, they can talk on 3 things. They just have to fill out 3 different.
Three different cards, okay, and then you just call them appropriately. Second part, on our agenda, we have a section public comment, which is typical non-agenda public comment. We also have a section for the representatives that show up, you know, the council reps, the assembly reps and such. The debate back and forth on which to go first. Those reps sometimes are going to 3 meetings in a night. They're like, hey, can I get my stuff and get out of here? Which forces the public to listen to them. The flip side, the public goes forward first, forces those reps to hear what's going on.
Right, you know, we've had this discussion. So after we have the roll call, and then we approve the minutes of the previous meeting, then is the reports from elected officials, the senior lead officer, that kind of thing. Then is public comment. And we could reverse it, but we have what you just said. I have to leave, I have to go to another meeting, I call, and every staff person says, oh, call me first. And, you know, they give their 2 minutes and they're out. So, you know, you can do either one. Now, there's another council I know that puts public comment on non-agenda items at the end, which I don't think is
that's wrong.
I think that's wrong.
We put our public comment before we have the elected officials' reports. And there were times that I might reverse that for some reason. But I think that it's a good idea for the representatives of the public officials to know what the stakeholders are interested and concerned about. So yeah, you know, if you know that there's, you know, if your city councilman is sending a rep to multiple meetings and you know that, you may take that into account in the order. But
yeah, okay, sir. I'll go.
Just real quickly, we're talking about public conversation between board members.
Louder.
Say if 2 board members have an idea, which is an idea, they can talk amongst each other before it's agendized, or do they have to only...
the problem is that once something is on your agenda, anything you're going to be voting on cannot be discussed by multiple board members. If you have two people talking about it, you don't have a problem. But I can pretty much guarantee that if you have enough 4 to 5 to 6, and so getting people to understand that is difficult.
I see.
Board agendized, board members can talk about, generate something that's not on the agenda.
You can talk about something.
Okay. Could we, yeah.
And here, what about going from transition from one president to another? How do you form these structures, new ways of doing running committees?
Well, then, say, you get together, and I would assume that the incoming has been on board, and
What if that happens? You transition, how do you?
It, really depends on the structure. Now, if you have somebody who's on board who is going to step up and be president, then hopefully we'll have a natural transition where the previous president is talking to the new president. If you have a structure where the stakeholders have elected somebody specifically as president who was not there before, the one, I guess the biggest piece of advice I would offer is that if the old president and the new president are adversaries, that hopefully the new person will be able to say to the old person, I just want to do what's best for the community, and it would really help me and the whole community, the board and the whole community, if you'll cooperate and try to make this as easy as possible. It has to try to engage them in what's best for the community.
the person back here, yes.
Yo quería preguntarle acerca de los comités.
I wanted to ask you about the committees.
Por ejemplo, el comité ASCOM, tengo entendido que está compuesto por miembros del consejo.
For example, the APCO committee, I understand that is formed by the members of the board, the APCO.
Ok, y el comité permanente tiene que estar compuesto por 4 miembros de la mesa directiva y la comunidad.
A permanent committee should be formed by 4 members of the board and 4 members of the community.
Y la otra cuestión es si, por ejemplo, nos presentan un informe, el informe de finalizar, por ejemplo, no tiene que ser explícito, me imagino que tiene que ser general. Si no nos dan en el consejo vecinal, ¿lo podemos pedir aquí? No.
For example, the financial report, I understand that it doesn't need to be specific, but if they don't provide us a copy of the financial report, can we request it here?
Well, who are you talking about with financial?
O sea, de la comunidad.
Hablando de personas
Sí, no, y lo da expuesto, no lo da general. Ajá.
Yeah, what happens is that when we ask a copy to the treasurer, he gives us a summary, but he doesn't give us a detailed report.
It's public information. If a board member or a stakeholder makes a request, it must be provided. If that's not happening, then you need to either are you the president? Okay. You need to either make sure that the president knows that you've made the request and it was not fulfilled, or if necessary, you need to go to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and ask for their help.
We're going to have to break because